Hello, my name is Svetlana Stone. You're watching Artist Voices, where we believe it's essential for artist voices to be heard. And we are pleased to have here Ivan Akansiima, local musician, to learn about what does it take to be a musician in the 21st century. Thank you for watching us. Hi, Ivan.
Hello.
Thank you for coming and joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how was your day?
My day has been very good, very preoccupied, but good.
Thank you for finding time to come over.
You're welcome.
And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you get to Kalamazoo?
Yeah, as you've heard, my name is Ivan Akansiima. I consider myself an international musician. I've been in Michigan for the last 10 years, originally from Uganda, East Africa. And I have been a musician most of my life, playing multiple instruments, including Western instruments, piano, guitar, and so forth, drums, as well as African instruments, hand percussion, and other traditional instruments, including the kalimba that I brought with me. Yeah, I've been in the States for the last 10 years as a student, as a practicing or professional musician across West Michigan, as well as a traveling musician. Before I moved to the United States, I toured and performed across the world, in Europe, across Africa, and Asia. Yeah, that's a little bit of who I am. And I'm also a Christian musician. I have led and continue to lead worship and play music in a sacred or religious role as well. Yeah.
And speak about your study. You graduated from Western Michigan University as a jazz musician, correct?
Yes, I did. That was 2019 is when I graduated from Western Michigan University with a master's in arts performance, or jazz performance and piano.
And you also mentioned the instruments that you said, I'm playing multiple instruments, and you brought even one with you. And it's called kalimba. And I see you have it right now. Can you tell us a little bit about this instrument?
Yeah, the kalimba is more of that name. Kalimba is a Western, that's a European name. That was a name that was invented or made up by a historical ethnomusicologist whose name I believe was Hugh Massey or something like that. I can't recall right now. But before he called it a kalimba, he'd spent several years in Africa researching African music, particularly African folk music and folk instruments. And this instrument right here, in my country, we call it the akogo. It's spelled as A-K-O-G-O, akogo. But its origin is in the southern part of Africa, in a country which is known as Zimbabwe, or southern Rhodesia, as some of you have knowledge about African history. And right there in Zimbabwe, it's known as the imbira or lukembe. So traditional instrument that has been around about 3,000 years. And it started out as a storytelling instrument, an instrument that folks in the history of South African music used to sing along. Sometimes as people moved around rearing their animals and raising cattle and in the bushes, they made these instruments. The original instrument did not have these steel tines to it. It was all made of wooden material or organic material, grown material. Even the tines were wooden, made out of bamboo stick. But after especially when the steel age came around, when steel was discovered, Africans were able to take advantage of that, so they reinvented it again and then made it a little bit more modern, but still very organic, very basic.
Yeah, I
It's
can
made
see
up
that.
of wood with a hollow space in between, and then with tines, steel tines that are arranged. For those of you who are familiar with a little bit of music theory, this one particularly is a pentatonic kind. But they come in different kinds. There is different kinds of tuning. The pentatonic, which is the five tone. There are also chromatic, which has all the 12 tone system of the Western music scale. And then there is a tenor, a soprano mbira, is a tenor mbira, and an alto mbira. And they are even bigger. They vary in size. There's also one that's a bass. So really, it is arranged in a way where the lowest notes are pretty much towards the center of the wooden area. So these two notes here, these are the lowest, and then they go on each side. They go higher. They raise high. They go high in range, and so this one is tuned in a pentatonic.
Yeah, that's look and sound very cool. Can you play a little bit on this so we can hear how that sound?
Well, let me just kind of improvise something
here.
here.
Just a little bit so we can hear the sound. That sounds so cool. Thank you. Thank you. Ivan, I can see you're into music. How you were, can you tell our viewers how you were introduced to music, how you become a musician?
Yeah, I started music at a very early age. I was 7 years of age when I started playing. But, music is something that starts with us before we are even born, and when we are in the womb of our mothers. For some of you, as you know, nowadays I see people talk to their unborn babies. Well, that's how we are first introduced music. Because when we are in the womb of our mom, we hear the heartbeat. We communicate.
That's
the babies
true.
communicate
That's
with
true.
the mom, and that's through vibrations, sounds, feeling. The babies can feel. So that's music. Babies can feel rhythm. The baby, sometimes when you're pregnant women, you see the baby kicking. There's vibration. So all that is music. So I believe music starts in the womb, and then it continues on outside of the womb. So even though some go on to develop it, for me, outside the womb of my mom, I started when I was 7 years old. As a result of, if I recall, we had, at that time, there was a Christian band that was popular at that time in the 90s, in the early 90s. They had come into our hometown for a conference and a great concert. It was a very popular group. My parents were happy to host them for 2 weeks before their concert. And for those 2 weeks, they practiced every morning. They had a big space in our room where they set up their equipment. So they woke up at 5 in the morning and they'll practice. This was the best band, Christian band my country had to offer at that time. And when they woke up, I was up too, and I would stand in the corner and listen and watch. And then, they did their thing. After their visit, they went. But that had a very tremendous impact on my life. It's particularly the drama was really captivated with, there's something powerful about the drums, because the drums, we don't hear the drums. We don't only hear the drums. We feel the vibrations of the drums. And the drum is predominantly the instrument of African music history. Or you can even argue that the drum is the instrument, the first instrument after the voice. After the voice, the drum is the second most powerful instrument that can be traced all the way through the history of humanity. It's how, for those of you who are familiar, especially in Africa, African folklore music starts with drumming. So the drums are, I could feel the vibrations.
So your first instrument was drum, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I learned how to play. The band left. I was inspired. And then I started to play on the things at home and playing. And then my mom quickly put me in touch with a drummer at my church. I come from a very Christian family. And this drummer took me in as a mentor. And my first lesson with him, he didn't even show me what to do. I sat down on the drum because I watched the drummer from the band and I saw everything, what he did. So I learned. I put everything in my head. When I sat down in my lesson, I knew what to play. And naturally, rhythm came out of me. So that's how I started. And what happened from there, the church just gave me opportunity. The church musicians kind of took me under their wings and they gave me opportunity to play with them. At that point in the early 90s, I was the youngest musician in my hometown. And it was quite a very busy, industrious city, big at that point. So I remember people used to come to my church to see this little young guy on the drums. So that's how I started in music. And then I continued to grow and branch off in many other instruments.
So your first impression when you saw the band playing the music and you really like it and you start playing drums, so your first impression, like when they playing the music is great, but when you actually start playing, was it easy to learn? Like you said, you were naturally but then where you realize that besides the performances, there are rehearsals involved. How you were coping with that when you learn that it's not just performances?
Well, music is such
and how you become a piano player. We know that you're a great piano player.
As I continued to grow, from childhood, all through my childhood, since I was 7 years old, until I played drums until I still play drums to this day, but I played drums exclusively and actively until my early 20s.
So when you start piano?
But when, and then I'm going to back up a little bit. You said something that was really important, I think, that how do I learn? So music came naturally for me. I didn't think of it. I didn't learn it logically. It just naturally came out. And I just expressed it. And it got better by playing, like any other thing. Especially the arts, we get better by doing it. But when I was around, maybe around 13 years old there, I started to sense that I had an ear for all the instruments. So when I listened to music, I could hear all the instruments very clearly, the different parts. When you're playing in a band, you have many instruments happening at the same time, and you have to train your ear sometimes to hear one instrument. Some people are good at just hearing the bass or just hearing the drums. For me, I could hear everything. Then by the time I was 16, I'd already started experimenting with the piano. And I didn't start out as a pianist, though. From the drums, I didn't go straight to the piano. From the drums, I went to the bass. And the way that happened is one day in my church, our bassist, who was also one of our music directors, did not come for the service. So when they looked around, everyone said, "Oh, Ivan can play the bass. He plays everything. He just naturally plays. Ivan, you play." So everyone always thought of me, I could just pick up an instrument and play. And that's true even up to now. If you put an instrument in my hand, it won't take me more than 20 minutes to figure it out and play it, make music with it. Or even less than that. So it was one of those experiences. I picked up the bass, played. The first song was okay, messy, but by the time I got to the second song, I knew what to do. So everyone said, "Oh, you are a bassist." So so then our church bassist, when he heard that I played the bass in his absence, he encouraged me. He said, "No, keep playing. Don't." Actually, that day he came during the service later.
So that was your second instrument,
Yeah.
right? That you learned.
And then from there, I went to the guitar, because my sister, whom I was living with at that time, her husband was a guitarist too. He was a really great African guitarist. So, I would hear him play at home, but I never asked him anything. But I could hear I was being influenced. So I went home with a guitar I got from church, and he said, "Oh, let me show you a few things." He showed me 3 chords. Said, "This is how you do it." This. He never had to show me again. Showed me once. From there, I started to, figure it out. But one thing I would say that helped me in my development is I played every day, all the time. Basically my whole life, all I did is go to school, go to church, and play music. That's basically what my life was. Eat food, sleep, play music, go to school, eat food, play. That's it. That's how my day. For a very long time too, almost till this day, a lot of my activity during the day revolves around music. So then, from there I started the guitar, and then I continued a little bit, but I wasn't serious because I was still playing the drums. These instruments I was doing in the background. No one really, I wouldn't reveal to people so much. And then one day I had a friend of mine who was a great pianist. He's much older. He was kind of like a mentor to me. He said, "Ivan, I think you're going to be a great pianist one day. I can see you can play the piano. I think you should." So I said, his name was Mark. I said, "No, Mark, I don't think I'm going to be a pianist." He said, I think I see you becoming a really good pianist." So I convinced my pastor at church to buy an upright piano so we can start giving free music lessons to teenagers in our community. He said, "Okay." So he bought it. And when he bought it, what I really wanted, I wanted him to buy the piano so I can start practicing on it. Not really. But he bought it, and when he bought it, I put a lock in it, and I was one of the 2 people who had the key. So from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m., I started to practice and teach myself how to play the piano. And how did I start? The piano is a little bit complicated. It's not one of those instruments you can somehow just play it, but to really understand how.
So you realize to really understand the instrument, you have to spend time, and then you start doing it without anyone telling you that.
And to not just to spend time, but to spend time the correct way, especially if you want to really understand how the keyboard, as we call it, the keyboard is basically how the keys of the piano are arranged and how they work. And I was fortunate at the time. I had some friends abroad, where one of them was in Asia. So I told him to buy me some books about piano technique. Bought me. So then he bought me these books. But the books were all written they had written music. I couldn't read music at that time, but I had a very sharp music ear, which I still do. So when I brought me the book, I quickly had to figure out, okay, I don't understand this written music. So I got another book that taught me how to read music. Then I would spend hours and hours learning how to interpret these exercises that were written out.
So how old you were when you started doing that?
I was around, that was 16, when I was 16.
When you started.
So I spent hours. For about 8 months, I spent 9 hours every day just
to study piano.
Yeah, studying how the keyboard works, learning scales, technique, arpeggios, all 12 keys, everything. The problem wasn't the ear. I had the ear already. I was just learning how to use my hands on the piano. But not really playing it, performing on the piano, just work every day. I'll go to my church, and I was very disciplined. I think that was one of the most disciplined experience I've ever had as a musician. I still do, very disciplined, but I was committed and very focused and determined. And I'm glad I did, because later on, when I eventually came to America and continued in more professional music training, I had already established a strong foundation. And once you figure that out, it stays with you, never goes away, and you just build on it. So I laid the foundation, and I'm glad I did. And that's how I started. But still, I was, when by that point later on, by the time I came to the US, then I was playing and performing professionally with, touring artists. I wasn't always a pianist. A pianist, I have really focused on the piano in the last 10 years that I've spent in the United States. But before that, I was a guitarist, bassist, drummer.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how I got into that.
That's amazing. And you earlier mentioned that you are a Christian musician. Mm-hmm. So you you holding your master in piano, mm-hmm. piano jazz study. So how you combine all this, like Christian music and jazz study, and what you're trying to say through your music?
Yeah, it's a very meaningful combination, because jazz music is a very highly creative art form. And Christianity exists. In fact, before Christianity is a result of creativity. What do I mean by that? Well, Christianity is rooted in God. And when we look at the Bible, in the book of Genesis, for those of you who believe in the Bible or are Christians, the first thing that God reveals about himself or about God is creativity. Mm-hmm. In Genesis chapter 1, the first chapter is showing God is let there be. It's creation. In the beginning there was, and then God said, let there be. So we see that, and jazz in the same way is a very exclusively creative art form. What does that mean? Now, it can be done or approached in many different ways, but jazz centers around the basic idea of being creative, seeing and producing and making music through a creative approach, imagination, built on improvisation, and so forth and so forth, and many things get into, But how does jazz and my Christian faith connect? Well, that was the connecting factor. When I first had jazz, it was creativity that struck me. The freedom.
That's true.
The ability to use your imagination, the greatest gift God has given all humanity, especially, or almost all creatures. I mean, I look at these birds, sometimes I see the bird nests on the tree. I say, who told these birds to build a house for themselves? There is no school where the birds go to school to build. They're creative. They figured, I need to have kids. I need to lay eggs. I need to protect them. And they don't have hands.
They know how to do that, yeah.
They don't have hands with 5 fingers.
Right.
But they build a big nest and they put it in the right place.
That's true.
And they go and find food. That is creativity.
That's true.
God put imagination in all creatures, expecting all creatures to use that. And jazz is exactly the same way. Jazz is merely a repetition of what has been done before, where all creativity is inspired by what has been done before. But more importantly, inspired to create something that has not been done before. And in fact, Christian belief, in Christianity, we talk about things like faith. Now, the Bible defines faith as a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In other words, faith is that substance which is not seen or touched or known through your logical sense, but has the ability to create something, to be something that has not been there. And that's exactly how jazz music works, really. But from the result of what faith creates, we are able then to be inspired to create more. In the same way with jazz, you make music, and when you hear, you feel what you're making, it inspires you, it opens your imagination more. So that's how I connect Christianity and faith. And I see it for me when I first heard jazz. I said, this is the music I want to. I don't want to be in a contained, limited, ritualistic, traditional religious belief. No. Because what we see, God is not a traditional dealer. He does not do things in one way. God is someone who makes a way in the ocean But when we think of a road, we think, oh, the road has to be on a piece of land. But for those of you who read your Bible, God is someone in the Bible. We see God providing bread from heaven.
That's
from
true.
the clouds. There is no baker in heaven, in the clouds, but God made bread fall, And the ground, the dust, the Bible says that from dust, even the human body is made. But when you lift dust, it's just dust. It's just particles. But creativity makes anything able to produce something. And that's what jazz music is about. Creative arts are about that, not just jazz music. Even classical music. Classical music is a creative art form. It's just a style that the people who composed and created classical music, they were able to invent a system of how to preserve that music. But they did not tell us to stay there, to only play what they played. No. They were just smart because they didn't have, recording technology and all that. They didn't have maybe jam sessions like we do. So they simply found a way to preserve that music, create a language, document it. But they did not say, please, Beethoven did not tell us, please play this way my piece forever. No. I think Beethoven only revealed what their creative imagination was and left it as a gift. And in the same way, we take that, learn from it, but then expand on it. Build more, So that's how I see the connection, and I continue to see connection with jazz and faith. And encourage people to be free to use your creative imagination. Be free to interact. Jazz is very interactive music. Christianity, faith, God is a very interactive God. In fact, God reveals himself he not for anything else but to be with people, to connect with people, to love, to hear people. That's why we pray. For those of you who believe in prayer, why do you pray? You pray for something there. You pray because you believe somewhere on the other side someone is listening, and not only listening, there's a conversation. This is what we see in jazz. That's why when you see jazz musicians performing, it's very interactive,
It is very interactive.
Even just playing, sometimes you see a jazz musician playing solo, what we call playing solo piano. Even like for me, when I'm playing solo piano, I think of both my hands as two people talking to each other. Or my fingers as 10 people having a conversation. This one can say something, this one can disagree. And then the head is the one who is uniting, because creativity is not about separation or dividing or isolating. Creativity brings all things into perspective to build one cohesive unit, agreement, and that's how we evolve as the human race. Everything works together. Even the science tells us that the heart cannot run the body by itself. It needs muscles to transfer the blood. But the blood alone is not the most important thing. It needs the brain, the feet to move the body. So there is a cohesive collaboration. In the same way, creativity or faith or Christianity or whatever you believe, but I think God is much way like that. So when you put the pieces together, you see a very deep connection there, and it's important for people to understand that it's not merely an art form of entertainment. It's bigger than that. It's expressing freedom. It's creating. It's connecting. It's telling stories. It's setting your own narrative. It's drawing people in. It's disagreement, agreement, sharpening, evolving, but above all, it's a great democracy where everything is important, even the least, So that's how I see jazz and faith and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you. Back to Artist Voices. For those of you who just tuned in, we are here with Ivan Akansiima, local musician, to learn what does it take to be a musician in the 21st century. Thank you for being with us. And Ivan, I would like to learn more about you and about your music. We've talked about how you connect your Christianity and jazz. What are you trying to tell to the people through your music? Do you do any songwriting or composing? And if yes, then what kind of message you try to bring to the world?
So my biggest message has been telling people to see and have a bigger perspective, to be open, because the world, for example, if you're here in Kalamazoo and you're born and raised in Kalamazoo your whole life, went to the best school in Kalamazoo, whatever, you might think the whole world is like Kalamazoo, but you're wrong. You know what? There is a whole world on the far southern part of Australia where there's a whole different view, but still the same world. So, but how does someone way far, I mean, I'm from Uganda, all the way. My entire culture, perspective, being, personality is formed in that. You know, before I came to America, I was 25 years when I came to America. So a lot of my entire, perspective, formation, cultural, traditional thinking, education is formed from that perspective. But how have I been able to survive and thrive in this other part of the world where I was introduced to other unique ways of looking at life, different ways of how people live the same life. We all have one sun, one moon, same air we breathe, same, world, earth, planet. So it's not that different, but perspective is unique, culture, tradition. So in my music is really characteristic of diversity. What I mean with that is through the lens of rhythm. Where I come from, Africa is one of the richest music cultural continents in the world, particularly in the area of rhythm. There are hundreds and hundreds of music traditions in Africa that are unique in just one country. In my country alone, there are less than 50 different kinds of music cultures and traditions. And that's a lot. And my country is a very small country, so it's almost like the size of Delaware State. But there's enough cultural diversity in there, you can't consume it all and understand it from different parts of the country. So what I encourage, even as a jazz musician who has been, my musicality in the last 10 years has been shaped by Western music lanes, because I went to school here, I did my undergrad here, but it did not start here. I have always seen my experience here as a musician who has been in school here. For me, school is simply a place where I come to be exposed to how other people think, not merely to learn how to, because I don't believe in mono thinking. I believe in a very wide way of looking at things and what can be, what is the possibility. So diversity is a big thing. And even in my jazz, the way I play jazz is not necessarily a traditional way as, maybe school will teach you. Schools tend to teach people to repeat what other people have done. And that's okay. We all learn from what has been done. But I believe as soon as you get your feet up, when you were a baby, how do we learn to walk? We learn by crawling, following mommy around the house or the daddy around the house. They go to the kitchen, you go. But as soon as the baby is, maybe 2 years and they can stand, guess what? They're going to stop following you around. They're going to go find other places. They're going to start wanting to play outside. They are mapping up their world. Now they are putting into perspective, well, I don't want to go to the kitchen. I want to be outside.
That's true.
So in the same way, art, for me too, is how I sometimes look at music. So diversity is one of the biggest messages in my music. Freedom of expression is very important, and unity, is very important. Spirituality is very important in my music. And I think above all is God is very, and I guess that is covered by spirituality. But I think those three things, diversity, spirituality, freedom, and cross-cultural integration, those are some of the most important things in my music. Yeah.
And speak about music, like being a musician, you Your story is very unique and interesting. You started as a drummer, then you tried the bass, then you get involved with piano and continue. Then this instrument, kalimba.
Yeah.
So and then start in one country, Uganda. Then you're here in United States, and you are very passionate about music. But is there any challenges that you would like to tell us that musicians are facing today? And if yes, then what would be your advice how to overcome those challenges? Or
I think but there are different kinds of challenges that musicians or like in general humanity faces. There are, there's a dynamic way. There's a dynamic way to look at it, or a very personal or cultural. But in general, as a human race, our challenges are pretty similar. We all worry about, today, yesterday, tomorrow, what went wrong, how to make ends meet, commercial challenges, relational challenges. However, and all those things for the creative artist, those things do influence your artistry. Whether it's your own emotional challenges, where you are emotional, and that could include your relationships, maybe your mental health, your mental challenges, or financial or economical. But how the artist, everything for creative artists is very important, because those are the things that we draw our message and our mission and our purpose from. Our artistry is influenced by daily life. In fact, if you're an artist and you don't look from your daily experiences to draw your artistry from, then you're not truly being honest. Because art is the voice, is the mirror of daily experiences of That's society true. Or personality. So the challenges vary, but I for sure now we're looking at the 21st century, particularly for jazz musicians, when you look at jazz history, jazz music became popular through performance venues, particularly the jazz clubs, which started historically as jam sessions, places where musicians went to learn and play together and to share music community. And over the years, when you go back in the 40s, 60s, maybe 50s, 60s, in many cities around the world, particularly like New York and, say New Orleans and Chicago and so forth and other places, these were big places. Jazz clubs are traditionally very tiny spaces, not very big compared to concert halls. They are clubs, as the name suggests. A club is usually a unit of few, manageable number of people, maybe the most 100 or so. Places where musicians could go and intimately share their art. But those places have in the last 20 years, have kind of, been shrinking, The jazz market, the market for musicians.
And why it's happened, you think?
I think it's a result of so many things, but partly because of how music economics and the market of music is evolving. The industry of music has evolved, especially, particularly, commercial music has taken over creative music. There was a time, for example, if you go into history, music history, many years ago, I'm talking about even like in the 1800s. Where people, they didn't have radio, for example. Before we had radio and TV, what did we do for entertainment? We came together and sang together. That's why every home had a piano, for example, in European history. People had pianos not because they just wanted them for decoration. No, that was radio. Everyone played, everyone sang together. Okay, and over time we evolved. Now we have internet. Now I can access any music I want for free on my iPhone. So why should I go to the jazz club to listen to Ivan when Ivan has a CD and I can listen to everything? And now technology, social media is telling us you don't have to share the same space. Part of what makes art great, or performance art, is the experience of being in the same room, Svetlana, you're sitting right there and there's a piano and you don't only hear it, you feel the vibration, you see these artists, you greet them, you shake their hand. Those are all experiences that enhance our humanity. But those places and opportunities have slowly been shrinking. And in the most recent, last 3 years, COVID even, isolated us more. It made us even consider, maybe we should consider technology over. Now you see most musicians are streaming. We're all doing it, streaming live. And it's great because we are evolving. It's not bad, but it's taking away something. And that brings a challenge for the artist whose life depends on performance, going out there, creating shows so people can come and share your artistry, especially for those creatives whose product is the creative experience. Because the music industry thrives on two different ways. There is commercial music, which has some form of creativity, but mostly focuses on the economic gain of music. And then there is creative music, which basically focuses on the craft, the process of making music, the mystery of that. And we see slowly commercial music has kind of taken over more. So that creates economic challenges. We've seen during COVID, the challenge that came as a result was the ability to play with one another, hear each other, respond, have that back and forth interactive aspect. But now we've slowly returned to normal. And there are many other challenges. Spiritual, to be a really honest artist, you need to understand that we don't make music. We don't have the power to make music. We are only messengers, carriers of music. Music is a gift made by God. God makes music. We spend our lives refining. We are like carriers. We are like a big tube which needs to be cleared so that the music can go through. That's why we practice, But we don't have we don't make music. We don't have that. The one who made us make music, and we are the ones that produce that. So it's important to understand what is the spiritual, where do you stand spiritually in your artistry? What does that? But there are many multiple challenges. They vary individually and through community, geographically, culturally, traditionally, all the above. But I think the greatest challenge is for the artist to remain consistent, true to their own story. Do not abandon your story. Your story is what makes you relevant.
That's important.
In life, yeah. Not telling other people's story or living someone else's story. Live your story. Let that be, because at the end of the day, that's your legacy. Yeah, I don't want to spend my entire lifetime saying people remember me. Oh, Ivan, the pianist who played like Oscar Peterson. I don't want that legacy. I want, even if I'm playing one note, I want to say, yeah, Ivan, the pianist who played one note. That's enough. That means I have a legacy. I've made my mark. Yeah, so that's it.
Ivan, what is the best piece of advice you ever received from someone, and what advice you would tell to the other musicians who thinking to be a musician?
The best advice I ever received from someone, when I was around 17 years old, at my church then in Uganda where I played, there was a musician. He was a guitarist, to be more specific. He was from Nigeria. His parents had moved to Uganda to teach. They were professors at one of the universities in my country. But this guy, his name was Ebenezer. He was a renowned guitarist in Nigeria. So he came to Uganda to visit, spend some time with his parents. So he joined our church and he came and played with us. And he loved me so much. He said, one day he said, Ivan, I love your passion. You're a very passionate young man. He said, it's very rare to find a young teenager who is serious and committed and focused in their music like you. I see you are always practicing. You are always, every time I see you, Ivan is practicing. But you see, that one day he said, but Ivan, when are we ever gonna hear what you're practicing? And at that point, I didn't understand right away what he meant. But he quickly broke it down. He said, I love that. But let me tell you, the greatest practice you can do for yourself is go on the stage. Bring on the stage what you're working on backstage, because that's where it makes sense. That's where it has the power to be heard, to speak for the people who need it. And that later, years passed, and later on I understood. So I learned that work hard we all have what I call the backstage. You know, for those of you who are artists performing, you know what the backstage is. It's the place where you go, in the room where you prepare, you warm up your voice, no one is there seeing that. But it's a place where you fix what needs to be fixed. But don't stay there. Do you see what we do? We never make the concert there. We never perform in the backstage. No. We go there just to warm up, but the performance is on the stage. So I learned, whatever you do, don't spend so much time in the backstage, because the backstage has no audience. The audience is on the front stage, in the open. And don't even be intimidated what you have not perfected in the backstage. A lot of what
and I think that's what we are musicians intimidate, that we think we're not perfect, we're not ready to perform.
No, perfection is not really a reality thing, because life is always a piece in progress, a work in progress. Life is a work in progress, no matter what. And we see it. Even science shows that. That's why we keep evolving. So don't stay in the backstage, and don't wait for it to be perfect. Just the Bible says, I'm a Christian. One time Jesus was teaching and said, if you have faith as little as a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. Jesus did not say, go and if you have bulldozers as bigger than the mountain, then you can move the mountain. What is Jesus telling us? It's the same concept. Say, just have a little bit and be confident with that and bring it in front of the people. It gets better because when we perform, when we share with the world what we have, the part of what we call the refining process is not dependent on each one of us as an individual. It's a community thing. When I put something in front of people, the chances are there's somebody who has already done it better. They're going to hear me. They say, oh, that was good. Have you thought about this? You're like, oh, my goodness. No. And then you add it. And then, you grow. But if you kept in the back, you probably wouldn't get that kind of
You don't know where you're supposed to grow. Exactly.
So I encourage musicians, younger musicians especially, don't wait so long in the backstage or the practice room. Find a community, find your ideas. You don't have to wait to be booked by a big booking agent or someone to discover. No, discover yourself. Don't wait for anyone. I discovered myself. I mean, thank God for my parents. But a lot of the opportunities that have changed my life and have helped me advance as a musician, even the way I ended up in America. No one was there. I didn't wait for someone. No, I went out and started, for example, I started gigging. I started playing. I was curious. Well, there's got to be music outside of just church because I grew up in church. And from that curiosity, I exposed myself to, and that's how I advanced. So get out there, If you're a young musician, you can play 5 songs or so. You can do something. Hey, invite your friends. If you're a teenager, hey, call your friends' families. Put up a show in your house, in the backyard. Put together a nice 30-minute repertoire. Put a story around it, And, if you're a creative composer, writer, like me, I write and I compose music. And then and start there. Make your story relevant. Don't wait for someone to make. Chances are we are all busy trying to be heard. So if you're waiting for someone to put your voice ahead of them, it probably won't happen because we tend to focus more about ourselves before we focus on others. So it's important that we develop that confidence. And then, so that's the advice I got from this friend. I listened, and from that day, I never wait. Whatever idea I get, I put it to work right away. Whether it's, as long as I am confident. Confidence is important. Yeah. Confidence, faith, and you have to be a great risk taker. Now, you may not have that ability to be a risk taker. Then bring people around you who are good at
support
you, who are more confident, who say, okay, we'll walk with you, don't worry. If you fall, we'll hold you. We'll keep you stand.
Well, don't let you fail, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then move forward. Have faith, but say what you mean and mean what you say, and say it confidently with truth. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Beethoven.
And don't be afraid to be yourself, like you said, be unique.
Yeah, I don't have to be Oscar Peterson,
exactly.
Keith Jarrett, or, Barry Harris, or any of the greats, or Miles Davis, and so many forth. And I just need to be Ivan. That's where I start. And then, maybe hopefully 500 years from now, people will remember me for being Ivan, not being someone else. So that's my advice, to younger everybody. And I follow the same advice. So I'm not telling you things I don't practice, So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story with us, for your great advice. Don't hiding in the back room. So practice and go ahead and shine. So, Ivan, how people can find information about you, your website, and your future performances? Maybe you would like to tell us about your future performances so people can find and attend your concerts.
Yeah, so I have a website. If you look it up, it's ivanjazz.com. And I also I stayed active and continue to be an active music performer or jazz, or however I play across Southwest Michigan. Recently, just this past week, I started a witness performance program. What I mean by witness, because of my faith, I'm a Christian, and it's part of my responsibility as an artist is not only to share my music, but to tell people about my belief, my faith. And that is something I have integrated with my music. So this outreach program is called Jazz Connect. It's really simply incorporating the gospel with jazz and helping people hear about Jesus Christ, faith, God, through the music, even through the songs that I use. So I started this in Holland at the church where I'm working right now as a residence in training, pastors in training. So it's called Jazz Connect. It's once every month, the last weekend of the month. We just finished the first one this past Sunday on the 28th. The next one will be on the 24th of September. And then if you go on my site, you will see my performance schedule. And then you can follow me through that, or I have a Facebook page, Ivan Akansiima, Instagram, Ivan Akansiima, and you can't miss me. If
there's a Spotify also, like Ivan Akansiima.
Yeah, I also
music.
have Spotify recorded now. I haven't released a lot of new music yet. I've recorded over the last 4 years music that I haven't released. But I do have a project I recorded with a friend of mine called Uganda Meets Jazz. This was during my early years of my studies in jazz. So you can check it out. It's on Spotify. But more music is coming. By the end of this year, I will be releasing some new projects. And keep up with where I am, and hopefully I'll play in your town one day or the other. Mm-hmm.
Thank you again. Thank you for joining us tonight. I really enjoyed to learn about you, about your music. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Well, this concludes this episode of Artist Voices, where we believe it essential for artist voices to be heard. And we are thank Ivan Akansiima for joining us tonight. Thank you for watching us, and see you next time.